Welcome back everybody. Today I'm pretty excited because I'm back at St Ives Skate Park. Now it was forecast to be dry and a little bit windy, but on the drive down it really rained and hailed a lot and the whole skate park is pretty wet. Now it is burning through and I can't see any more rain squalls in the distance, so I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to get out the squeegee and the towel and dry her off. I've really got my heart set on trying to do the backside 50-50 grind in the deep end. I've been mind skating it an awful lot and I also tried it out in my last session. The process I went for was to ride on to the coping first of all, just to get the feel of grinding and also get the feel of axling in off of the coping. And then I started my assault on the deep end, trying to get up into that 50-50 grind. I encountered a fair few issues, and while we're waiting for the pool to dry out, it might be prudent to reflect on those. The first issue I had was having the correct speed to get up on the coping in the deep end. I found it was a combination of having a good backside carve in the shallow end and also pumping the waterfall on the way down. I also found it felt best when I carved onto the coping, so not just go straight up and turn, but actually carve across the transition and try and carry that speed onto the coping with the trucks. My arch nemesis is fear, and the deep end of this pool is really steep coming back in. I found that when I got the right angular carve and the right commitment of the front shoulder into the turn, that I could get onto that cross-lock 50-50 grind position and travel along. The other thing that feel was making me do was break at the waist. So today I'm going to be mindful of trying to keep my core nice and tight when I get up onto that grind. The last part of the puzzle was coming back in. Now when I'm up on the coping, it just doesn't look like it's going to work. It's super scary. And another thing that was getting in my way was that def box. The def box seems to be right at the end of my grind when I want to come back in. So I've got two choices today. I either come off the grind earlier than I'd like to, or I try and grind right across that def box and come back in on the other side. I'm going to experiment with coming off a little bit before the def box. That's what I did last time for the couple that I made. But my intuition tells me that it's probably going to be easier to go flat out and grind and clear that def box so I haven't got any fear of coming back in or any worry about where I am on that coping. Anyway, enough of my yakking. This one's fairly high risk for me, so I'm going to go for the full Ironman suit of pads. I think by the time I've popped all that on, this pool is going to be dry and ready to skate. Okay, the pool is almost dry, but I've just spotted a nasty looking black cloud, which is coming right this way. Fingers crossed that it comes over and doesn't rain again because it's almost skateable. This 50-50 grind is really making me work for it. If I do get a chance to go for it before it rains, I'm going to just try and get up on that coping, see if I can lock in. Okay, just went for the first drop in, started to rain, and by the time I got to the deep end it was too wet to skate. That's one of those classic things. Spent 45 minutes drying out the pool, get one run, and that's the end of that. I am still quite hopeful, but I've managed to make my towel completely wet, so I haven't got another dry out left in that towel. I'm going to wait a minute, it's still raining. Once it stops, I'm going to have another little look. I'm absolutely hell-bent on getting the 50-50 grind. I refuse to give up, but there are limitations and the weather is one of them. Okay, I managed to make one in still travelling. I had a couple that were cut short by that death box. I ran out of coping. I didn't feel I could chance my arm, and the one that I took in was quite close to that death box. I also had an early lock-in that I tried to take in, and I went over the front just because I wasn't properly committed to coming back in. It's starting to rain again, but hopefully it'll burn through so I can get some more. I'm thinking because that death box is in the way, I'm going to try and just carve over the top of the death box to slightly change my line in, see if I can get across the top and still be travelling when I bring her back in on the other side. Okay, managed to make it in over that death box a couple of times. One of them was pretty close to coming an absolute cropper. It started to rain again for the 4th time, so I'm gonna have to call it a day. Okay, I've had a couple of days off and I've decided to come and test my skills out at the bowl that I usually skate. Now the Concrete Waves bowl in the deep end is a little bit tighter, it's a little bit smaller, and the circumference is a little bit tighter. So I'm viewing this as something that I'm going to find a little bit harder. I found that anything that is different, but this pool has got a couple of benefits over St Ives. Number one, the concrete is quite smooth and slippy, so I'm going to find knee sliding a little bit easier in here. I found at St Ives, the concrete was quite grippy, and that put me in sort of a position of not being able to knee slide because it ripped my pads off. But it also put me in a position where it was too steep and tall really to do a run out, or could pop one of the old hamstrings. Another point of difference is the coping quality. Here at Concrete Waves, that coping is a little bit more worn, the bowl's a couple of years older, and again, that's going to be a little bit more sticky getting on, so I'm viewing that as another thing that is going to be trickier than St Ives, where the coping was really smooth and pretty perfect. Anyway, enough of my yakking, it's on with all the pads. I'm just going to go in there with gay abandon willy-nilly and see what happens. Okay, I managed to make a few in. It feels pretty tight going around that corner, and to start with I just couldn't get up there and lock in. I found that coming back in was really scary as well. It was a bit of a leap of faith. It looked significantly tighter and steeper than it did coming back in from St Ives. But I found once I committed to it and came off with speed, it all seemed to work out absolutely fine. I did have a couple of refusals where I locked in and just jumped off, and that was so much nastier than trying to come back in and falling off on the way back in that I decided from that point onwards that I'd just go for the coming back in option. I found that all the key points I found at St Ives applied, so coming in with speed, carving as much as possible onto the coping, keeping my front shoulder in line with the coping and committing round, trying to keep my core as tight as possible. I did bend my knees a little bit more because this one felt a little bit tighter, so I found just getting down a little bit lower seemed to work nicely. I was mindful of going as fast as possible across the coping so I didn't stick in any of those bits of grizzle. I'm going to keep working on these. If you're new to the channel, feel free to hit subscribe. I make new videos every week. You can also follow me on Instagram @JohnBishopSkate. As ever, my name's been John Bishop, and I'll see you next time.